Folks, 10 days ago, Bell Canada's parent company cut another 690 jobs. That announcement came out on a Monday afternoon and was gone from the news by Tuesday morning. It was, by any measure, treated as a routine corporate disclosure, the kind of thing that gets a paragraph in the business section and then disappears. And the reason it disappears so quickly is that it has become so normal. Bell cut 690 jobs last week. Bell cut 690 jobs in November. Bell cut 4,800 jobs in 2024. Rogers is offering buyout packages to 10,000 employees, half its workforce. TELUS cut 2,800 Canadian jobs in 2025. The same year it added nearly 5,000 workers internationally. The three companies that control your phone bill, your internet, your cable, your wireless network, the three companies that between them own 86% of Canada's telecom market and have been collecting your money every month for decades, are quietly, systematically eliminating the Canadian workers who built them. And they are doing it while charging you the highest cell phone bills in the developed world, while posting hundreds of millions in quarterly profits, while their CEOs earn tens of millions of dollars, while they buy hockey teams and sports empires with the money you paid them to stay connected. And while the government that approved their mergers accepted their job creation promises and handed them spectrum licenses worth billions of dollars in public assets, watches. That is the story of Canadian telecom in 2026. Not a story of companies struggling to survive. A story of companies that have never been more financially consolidated, more dominant, or more profitable, deciding that Canadian workers are the most convenient cost to cut. Let's start with the number that tells you everything you need to know about what TELUS has become. A decade ago, 56% of TELUS's workforce was Canadian. 5 years ago, that had dropped to 35%. Today, Canadian workers represent 22% of TELUS's total global workforce. The company has 111,500 employees worldwide. 22% of them are in Canada. The remaining 78%, nearly 90,000 people, work outside this country, primarily through TELUS Digital, the company's AI and outsourcing division that operates in India, the Philippines, Central America, and Europe. In 2025 alone, TELUS cut 2,800 Canadian jobs while adding 6,100 international workers. The company got bigger, Canada got smaller. Let that proportion sit with you. A Canadian telecom company operating on Canadian spectrum that is public property, serving Canadian customers who pay among the highest rates in the world, now employs more people in the Philippines and Central America combined than it does in the country it was built in. The company's CEO, Darren Entwistle, earned $20.6 million in 2024. He is retiring on June 30th of this year, 4 days from now, having presided over the decade in which Canada went from representing more than half of TELUS's workforce to barely 1 in 5 employees. His legacy, measured in that single statistic, is the offshore transfer of tens of thousands of jobs that once belonged to Canadians. Now turn to Bell, which has been conducting the most aggressive workforce reduction in its history across the last 3 years. In June 2023, Bell cut 1,300 jobs. In February 2024, Bell announced 4,800 job cuts, described at the time as the largest restructuring in nearly 30 years. More cuts followed in June 2024. In February 2025, Bell offered voluntary severance to 1,200 unionized employees. In November 2025, 690 more positions eliminated. In February 2026, 60 employees, including 11 journalists, cut across Toronto, North Bay, and Calgary. And then 10 days ago, on June 15th, another 690 jobs confirmed gone. Add those numbers across 3 years, and you reach nearly 8,000 positions eliminated at Bell alone, at a company that, in its most recent quarter, posted net earnings of $616 million. $616 million in a single quarter. Profitable enough to pay a healthy dividend. Not profitable enough, apparently, to keep the Canadian workers who built the infrastructure generating that profit. Bell's official explanation for each round of cuts has been some variation of the same sentence: restructuring to align team structure with strategy, migration to fiber, operating efficiencies, technology transformation. It is the language of inevitability, framed as though these decisions are forces of nature, rather than choices made by executives in boardrooms who looked at a spreadsheet and decided the line item marked Canadian employees was the most convenient one to shrink. And then there is Rogers, which managed to do something that requires a specific kind of corporate audacity. Rogers spent $26 billion acquiring Shaw Communications in 2023. To secure government approval for that deal, Rogers made a commitment. It would create 3,000 new jobs in Western Canada within 5 years and maintain those jobs for a decade. That was the price of the merger. That was what Canada extracted in exchange for allowing the country's largest private telecom to absorb its biggest rival. 3,000 jobs. Written down, legally binding. In the year the merger closed, Rogers or former Shaw employees lost over 3,000 jobs. Cut, vacated, or eliminated. The company created jobs with one hand and eliminated an equal number with the other. When Rogers CEO Tony Staffieri was called before a federal parliamentary committee and asked directly how many employees had been let go as a result of the merger, he declined to answer. He mentioned that 1,800 jobs had been created in Western Canada and considered that sufficient. Members of Parliament did not receive a number. The Canadian public did not receive a number. The number exists. Company filings make it calculable, and it is approximately 3,400 net jobs lost in the year of the merger alone. Then in April 2026, Rogers offered voluntary buyout packages to approximately 10,000 employees, half its total workforce. The same week, the company confirmed it was cutting capital expenditures by $1.2 billion, a 30% reduction. The same company that had not yet fulfilled its commitment to create 3,000 Western Canadian jobs was simultaneously asking half its employees to consider leaving. Rogers has not answered questions about whether the Western Canada job commitment can survive the buyout wave. The company says it remains committed. It has not explained how. But the most specific and damning story in all of this is not a number. It is what happened to 400 people in 2025 who worked as technicians and managers maintaining the back-end infrastructure of Rogers' wireless network. These were not customer service representatives. These were the technical workers who kept the actual network running, the people responsible for the infrastructure that Canadian phones and businesses depend on every single day. In April 2025, Rogers told those 400 workers to make a choice: accept a severance package or sign employment contracts with Ericsson, the Swedish telecom equipment company that Rogers was bringing in as a contractor to run network operations. Rogers CTO Mark Kennedy personally assured those workers that the transition to Ericsson would not result in job losses. That was the commitment. That was what they were told. Months later, Ericsson announced those jobs were moving to India. More than 100 workers received notice they were being laid off. The timing was not coincidental. The announcement came in the middle of those workers' attempt to unionize through the United Steelworkers. When the union filed federally to represent the workers, Ericsson disputed which level of government had jurisdiction, adding legal complexity that delayed worker protections. Ontario NDP MPP Jamie West raised it in question period at Queen's Park. Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles called it the offshoring of Canadian privacy and national security. The workers who maintained the wireless infrastructure connecting Canadians to each other had their jobs sent to India in the middle of a unionization drive after being promised it would not happen. That sequence of events, outsource, promise no job loss, offshore anyway, fight the union, is not an accident. It is a pattern, and it is happening on the network you pay Rogers to maintain. Now step back and look at what all three companies have done simultaneously to the Canadians who pay their bills. In the last 3 years, Bell has eliminated approximately 8,000 positions. TELUS has cut Canadian workers by roughly 10,000 since 2023, while growing its international workforce by an equivalent number. Rogers has eliminated thousands through merger restructuring and is currently offering half its workforce a package to leave. Customer complaints to Canada's Telecom Ombudsman rose 62% in 2025. The service is getting worse. The bills are staying high. The Canadian workers are leaving. The profits remain. The average Canadian pays between $75 and $85 a month for a cell phone plan. A 2021 Rewheel study found Canada had among the highest minimum prices for a 20-gigabyte smartphone plan of 51 countries surveyed worldwide. In France, Ireland, and most of Western Europe, mobile competition has driven prices down by 30, 50, even 80%. In Canada, Rogers, Bell, and TELUS control 86% of the market, own most of the budget brands Canadians think are independent, and have successfully lobbied against foreign competitors entering the country for decades. The result is that Canadians pay world-leading prices to companies that have spent the last 3 years systematically replacing Canadian employees with offshore workers, AI tools, and contractor arrangements that move technical jobs to India. Here is the question that Ottawa has never been asked to answer clearly, in public, with a number attached. The spectrum that Rogers, Bell, and TELUS use to operate their wireless networks is public property. It belongs to Canadians. The government auctions it off to these companies in exchange for the right to operate commercially on Canadian airwaves. The last major 5G spectrum auction generated billions of dollars in bids from the same three companies that are now cutting tens of thousands of Canadian jobs. What exactly did Canada get in exchange for that public property? What are the job requirements attached to spectrum licenses? What are the Canadian worker commitments embedded in the agreements that allow these companies to operate on publicly owned airwaves? The answer, to the extent it can be found, is very little that is enforceable. The Shaw merger deal required 3,000 Western Canadian jobs from Rogers, a condition the company is now in the process of potentially undermining through a mass buyout. There are no comparable requirements for Bell, which has cut 8,000 jobs with no government recourse. There are no domestic workforce requirements for TELUS, which has moved from 56% Canadian to 22% Canadian workers in a decade. The spectrum licenses that generate billions in revenue for these companies come, effectively, without binding employment obligations for the Canadians whose public airwaves are powering them. Unifor President Lana Payne said it plainly at Bell during the 2025 job cuts. Bell cannot keep cutting jobs every year and expect the ship to turn itself around. She was right in her description and wrong about her prediction. Bell has kept cutting. The ship is still sailing. Quarterly profits are still being posted. The executives are still being compensated at levels that make the average Canadian's annual income look like a rounding error. The Canadian workers who built these networks, maintained these towers, answered the calls, ran the infrastructure, and paid into the system that made these companies worth billions. Those workers are now being offered buyout packages, or told their jobs are going to Ericsson, or simply let go in batches of 690 on a Monday afternoon and forgotten by Tuesday. 10 days ago, Bell cut 690 more jobs. It will happen again. And the bill you pay next month will be exactly the same as the one you paid this month. Because in Canadian telecom, prices are the one thing that never seems to come down.